talk about, so my name is Samir. I'm the GM for the data practice. So I run the data practice at Persistent. We are a $500 million company, primarily headquartered in India, but countries in 18 offices. We have offices in London as well. And I worked in the US for many years, and now currently I'm based out of India. So I have traveled the farthest for this conference, all the way from India. So what I'm going to try to talk today here is about the trends in AI as we see them. And I'm going to try to relate that with the value. Some of the speakers before me talked about value. And when in the business that we are in, I work primarily with our architects, with our technology teams, with our partners. And the most important constituent is our customers, where we kind of try to work with them to understand the value of the data that is out there. People talk a lot about the 3 V's of data, like volume, variety, velocity, but they often miss the 4th V, which is the most important, which is the value V. And that's what I'm going to try to talk today is, how do you create value out of the data that you have? And I'm going to try to link them to the trends that, we see. So there are a lot of trends that are happening in the AI/ML space. I obviously can't cover all of them. I'll try to cover the key ones that I see, and I'll try to correlate them with the case studies that we see and see how we are bringing value out of that. You'll see a lot of movie pictures here. This is Interstellar. I'm a movie buff. I've tried to put some pictures around so that, makes it a bit interesting. There is a lot of discussion about AI is not ready for prime time, AI is not this, AI is not that. But, the statistics say that, 27% of enterprises, this is some Gartner research, are already implementing some AI, and 82% of them are profitable. Now, if you want to maintain this profitability going ahead, you can't just sit. AI is one thing where you can't just build it, set it, and forget about it. You have to keep at it. You have to keep going at it, either in terms of technology improvements, in terms of data, in terms of operationalizations, in terms of making sure your model is right, refresh, rebuild. It's very complex. Getting AI in place in the first time is easier than making it operational all the while. So that's a key takeaway. And second is 55% of the data wrangling tasks are right now done using AI, and almost 75% of enterprises are saying that they will buy commercial AI solutions. So that's good news for most of the people in this room. But there's a lot happening in this space. One more thing which we have done at Persistent, Gartner has their quadrant, Forrester has their wave. What we have done is tried to plot all the AI trends, the ones which are most common, in terms of their maturity level. So if you see on the x-axis, we have got various stages called evaluate, demonstrate, incubate. Evaluate means you have a white paper, demonstrate means you have a white paper, and you have done something on top of it into a POC stage, then you did something in an enterprise, and then you proliferate, and then you saturate. The key is you move more northeast. So as you take certain trends, as you take certain use cases, you have to make sure that they are saturatable into an enterprise. And on the y-axis, what you have is the investment and the research that is going on in those trends. So if you take a combination of these two things, you have to be able to go there. So if something, and again, this is not a hard line. Some of these, you could argue that why is it here, why is it there? That's not the point. The point here is, there are various trends in AI which are in different phases. The goal that we have to have is get all of them onto the top right so that you can create value out of all of them and see where that goes. And I'm going to try to talk about the orange ones today. Depends on how much time I have. And I could talk about all of them, and you could come to the booth that we have, and I could talk to you about what this trend really means, what are the use cases, what are we really doing in the real world around these. All right, so before we start, this picture, right? Wimbledon final happened last week. There was a cricket final also, one of the best 2 finals that we had, the World Cup cricket and the Wimbledon. Awesome. And I've put Andy Murray here. He was not at the Wimbledon, but I thought it's good to have him because of the audience here. And how many of you know that Wimbledon did something very fascinating at this time using AI? Do you know? Like, they use a lot of AI, but this time they did something very cool. They used Watson for doing that. And what they did is actually they created highlight reels of every match that is out there. So the amount of matches that are played during the Wimbledon Championship are humongous, right? And so they used to have a manual team which used to create highlights. And the reason they did this is not because it was a repetitive and a boring job and they wanted to do it fast. The reason they did this because they wanted to eliminate bias. And that's what about ethics of AI and other things are there. They really thought that most of the highlights always go to the star-rated players. They always go to the crowded things. They always go to the center court. They ignore a lot of good games and good rallies and good matches that happen on some of the other courts with some of the non-ranked players. And that's why they did AI to do this. And it was not, initially I thought it's a cool use case, right? But it was done for bias. And that is a very important trend. And I'll talk about that a little bit because bias and understanding AI is one of the most critical aspects of AI, because if you say something and if you're not able to say why you say that, it is hard for anybody to believe, and that's the problem with AI. You say that this guy is having some sort of a disease or something because this black box thinks so, it's not going to work. So, this is pretty cool. I thought, it's worth mentioning here. All right, so let's come to the first trend. Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. And I think this trend, what I'm looking at here is the digital twin trend. And this is, a photomorphed image of Cate Blanchett. Again, a movie part of mine is coming out. And how cool would it be for you to ask a Siri or an Alexa or a Google Home or somebody saying that, okay, should I operate on this patient today? Now, keep aside the GDPRs and the human and all those other aspects of this, but this is a reality, right? Maybe not for hospitals and patients in the near time, but it is definitely a reality for the industrial world. And what this trend actually means about is basically you have got real-life interactions on one side, and as you work on those real-life interactions, you create data out of it, and then you create a digital twin out of it. And this digital twin then basically starts learning in terms of how the real-life part of it is working and creates a mirror image of that digital twin. So basically, what you're doing is you take a process or a real-life object or something in the real world and create a digital image of that particular thing. And the reason, the ML part here is not about how you create a digital twin. Eventually, the digital twin will get learned itself and it'll try to mimic the real part. But the key here is what could you do with the digital twin. So once you have a digital twin, you could basically try all your AI ML experiments on that digital twin in cases where it is hard to do the real experimentation, or it is costly, or it is dangerous, or whatever it is. But the digital twin is the area where you could actually try all your AI stuff and do it on this particular thing. So that's one trend. And 50% enterprises, big enterprises, already saying that they have a plan to get into a digital twin and do that stuff. The next one is out of clutter, find simplicity, and this is about text extraction. Now again, this is already a lot happening. People are talking a lot about this, but this is how cool would it be for you to call the Samantha or somebody? I'm not a he or a she, but basically give them hundreds and thousands of pages and try to summarize it for you. And this is a key trend, and this is mostly happening in the banking sector, in the customer service sector. And the key here is basically to kind of take a lot of these unstructured text source systems and kind of use all these BERT and Transformer and all these other cool algorithms that are out there, and basically provide a graphical representation and do analytics on top of it. So we are doing this for two of the biggest states in the US. We are doing this for a big government enterprise here in the UK. Basically, try to attack the problem from both sides. So on one side, you make your bots more intelligent by making them more conversational and making them understand better. On the other side, you also make your human force, who is in the back end, also more intelligent and more effective by kind of giving them ways to query the data sets using natural language processing. So it's also on the extraction side, it's also on the querying side. There's a company that we work with called ThoughtSpot, and they have actually turned this around for structured data also. So what you could do is you could actually type your questions for structured data into English, and they'll get you back the results rather than navigating folders and other stuff. This is what they would do for you. And in terms of statistics, this is significant. 93% data will be unstructured. 80% is the growth rate in terms of this data set. So 50 to 60% of the use cases that we currently are doing in ML have unstructured text angle to it. So this is a trend which you just cannot ignore, because it is out there. It is very deeply entrenched in enterprises, but it is becoming better at it, and you have to keep at it. And that's the point I was saying, that once you have on your laurels, you can't just sit on them. You have to keep getting better at it. The next one is about, this is I like, any fool can know the point. The point is to understand. And this is about explainable AI. And this also is about bias in AI and explainability in AI. And you really need to know why something is happening and what is the implication of doing that particular thing. So as humans, we could do this, but if you are talking about a machine, it gets hard. And the more complex the algorithm is, like if you're talking about deep learning, CNNs, RNNs, and all these other things, the more less explainable they become. So performance is important, but even in my view, you could live with a little bit less performance in terms of accuracy, but you have to have more explainability. We are working with a company where we are using blood cells to predict lung cancer, and we are using some blood tests to predict the occurrence of renal kidney diseases. And the key thing that we are working for them is imagine you telling a person that I have done this blood test and my machine learning algorithm thinks that you don't have a probability of having lung cancer. Nobody's going to believe in you. They are going to go and still do the biopsy because it's their life. So here, the key is you could go wrong a little bit, but you would be able to say, okay, I think that because you don't have blood cancer because A, B, C, D, and that is the most important point. So there are various ways of doing this. People are using enhancing the algorithms, writing logs, and doing other things. But there are simpler ways of doing this also by using brute testing forces. So you use a model, you use a lot of test data, you attack the models in different ways, and then you get some output so that you say, OK, this is why it is saying, and these are the reasons. So decision trees are the best here, but they are not as powerful as some of the other ones. There's a timer that is being shown here. It's only a minute left for me, so I have got 2 more trends. Let me try to just cover just one before I end up my talk. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. And this is about reinforcement learning. And reinforcement learning has become extremely popular primarily because of all the games and the AlphaGos and all these other things. But this is a key trend, and especially when you're living in a world where data becoming available is very hard. You basically are trying to work on simulators and try to get the reinforcement learning as a part of this. And this is not used in financial sector as much as this picture shows here. There are a lot of hedge funds and other things who are trying all these things in terms of trading in different ways and making yourself learn. And it's like brute force. You throw a lot of brute force at the algorithm, and it just keeps trying different things and creates its own data and then learns in the process. But this is used a lot in robotics. In our world, it is used a lot in those amputees and all those other things where you try different things and you kind of make the machine learn based on this. And there are a lot of use cases that you could do with this particular thing. It's primarily a feedback loop, and we are working on this for one of the largest shipping building companies where they want to basically control their HVAC monitors. I think there is this famous Google case study where they kind of reduce their cooling cost by 40% by just doing reinforcement learning, because it's really not possible to have all the data sets to train your models to all the scenarios. So you use reinforcement learning for doing that particular thing. I'll stop at this, but the key that I kind of wanted to talk about here is there's a lot that is happening in the AI world. There are a lot of trends happening here, but the key thing that we should all focus upon is the value that AI is going to bring. And just having a lot of data, I have this data, I can correlate to this. We come across with a lot of customers who think that they have data and they have everything. That's required. But the value in terms of how is it going to get consumed, how is its lifestyle going to be, who is going to be in charge of operationalizing it, and how do you know that it has gone bad, how do you know that it is still doing what it's supposed to do, because the scenario, everything is going to keep changing. So that value is what you have to keep looking at, and you should really look at every trend from that angle than every other angle. So that's about it. If you need any more information, I'll be at the booth. I'll be here for the whole day, and thank you for your time.